Evan had always believed his childhood was a simple one, filled with the normal joys and struggles of growing up in a quiet suburban neighborhood. His memories were laced with the warmth of long summer days, the scent of fresh grass, and the sound of laughter echoing through the streets. The one constant in his life back then was Leah. She lived next door, just a few houses down from him. A girl his age, with sparkling eyes and a smile that seemed to light up the whole world. Her black hair was shiny and always fell in soft waves around her face, and she had this odd, captivating green glow to her eyes that always seemed to see more than what was on the surface. From the very first day they met, it was as if they were two halves of the same whole. They spent their days exploring the woods behind their homes, climbing trees, pretending to be astronauts or explorers on distant planets. Leah always took the lead in their adventures. She'd wear a wide grin, declaring herself Captain Leah from Planet Fun, and Evan, ever the faithful sidekick, would play along. He had never questioned her, never doubted her stories of faraway places and fantastical adventures. To him, it was all real as the sky above them and the grass beneath their feet. There were days when Leah would talk about her home, this faraway, mysterious place she called Planet Fun. She would laugh and tell Evan that her people were different, not from Earth, but they lived here, among humans, in secret. Evan didn't fully understand, but it didn't matter to him. They were friends, and that was enough. He didn't need to know the full truth behind her oddities. She was his closest friend, and that was all he cared about. The memories of her bright laugh and boundless energy became some of the most treasured moments of his childhood. But one day, it all ended. Without warning, Leah was gone. There were no farewells, no hints that she would leave. One day she was there, laughing and talking about her latest adventure, and the next day, her house stood empty, windows shuttered. Her family was gone. The moving trucks that were supposed to have packed their belongings were nowhere to be seen, and even the neighbors had no idea where they had gone. It was as if Leah and her family had vanished into thin air. Evan's parents told him that they had moved away, but that explanation did nothing to ease the ache in his heart. He could still remember the way her house looked, empty and cold, as if the warmth of life had been sucked out of it. For days, Evan walked through his house in a daze, wondering why she had left, why she hadn't said goodbye. He kept imagining that one day she would return, just like she had when they were kids, bursting through the door with her wild stories and bright smile. But the days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and the months into years. The pain of her absence never truly left him, but over time, he learned to push it aside, focusing instead on school, friends, and eventually his career. Now, as a young adult, Evan had made a life for himself. He worked as a technician on the Mars colony, an essential position fixing communication towers and exploring the ancient ruins left by the first explorers. It was a quiet, solitary job, exactly the kind of work Evan had grown accustomed to. He didn't mind it, but there were moments when the weight of loneliness pressed down on him. Life on Mars was different. The colony was still growing, and though it held the promise of a new frontier, it was also a place where people felt disconnected, isolated. There were no childhood friends to share memories with, no one who could relate to the simplicity of the world he had once known. One afternoon, as he was out on the surface repairing a damaged satellite dish, he felt something, a strange sensation, a tingling on the back of his neck, as though someone was watching him. He turned, expecting to see a fellow technician or perhaps a curious visitor, but what he saw took his breath away. There, standing in the shadow of a nearby cliff, was a woman. Tall, elegant, her figure glowing faintly in the dim light of the Martian sunset. She wore a sleek black suit that shimmered, almost as if it were made of the night sky itself. Her hair flowed like liquid darkness, and her eyes, Those eyes were the same striking green he remembered from so long ago. Evan's heart skipped a beat. He took a hesitant step forward, his mind racing, and then it hit him. He knew her. "Leah?" he whispered, almost not believing the words coming from his mouth. The woman's lips curved into a smile that Evan would never forget. It was the same smile, the one that had lit up his childhood, the one that had made him feel like nothing was impossible. "Yes," she said, her voice a soft, melodic whisper that seemed to carry the weight of years. "I'm Leah. Do you remember me, human?" Evan stood frozen, his mind a blur of disbelief. He blinked several times as if trying to clear away the dreamlike haze surrounding him. The woman, Leah, took a step closer, her presence undeniable, filling the space around them with an almost tangible energy. There was no mistaking it. This was the girl he had known, the one who had been his closest friend. You're really her?" he asked, still trying to make sense of it all. She nodded, her expression gentle but filled with an unspoken sadness. "I was your childhood neighbor. I'm sorry I had to leave without warning, but there was much I couldn't explain at the time." Evan's thoughts tumbled over each other, as if trying to catch up with the enormity of what was happening. His childhood friend, his best friend, was standing before him. But she was different. She was not the girl he remembered. She was something more, something otherworldly. "I told you I was from Planet Fun," she continued, her voice full of quiet intensity. "I wasn't lying. But I was never just a human child. I'm not human, Evan." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight, settling deep in Evan's chest. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions. He wanted to know everything. Why she had left, what she had become, why she was here. But the only thing he could do in that moment was stand there, staring at the woman who had once been his closest friend. "Why now?" he finally managed to ask. "Why after all this time?" Leah's gaze softened. "Because there's something coming, Evan. Something that's going to change everything. And I need your help." The Martian wind whipped around them, carrying with it the sense of something bigger, something unknown. Evan knew, in that moment, that his life was about to change forever. The Martian sky stretched above, painted with hues of deep orange and fading purple as Evan stood there, trying to come to terms with what was happening. He was still trying to process the shock of seeing Leah again. She had vanished from his life all those years ago. And yet here she was, standing before him, looking almost as if no time had passed at all. Her beauty was undeniable, but there was something more, something deeper in her presence that was different from the Leah he had once known. There was an aura about her now, a certain otherworldly energy that Evan couldn't ignore. It was as if the very air around her was charged with a quiet yet potent force. Her eyes, that same radiant green, held a secret, a weight of knowledge, and experiences Evan could not begin to understand. He could feel the intensity of her gaze, as though she was silently urging him to remember, to understand. He took a tentative step toward her, his mind reeling from the barrage of questions that flooded his thoughts. "Leah, what happened? Where did you go? Why did you disappear?" The words tumbled out of him, desperate for answers, for closure. Leah remained silent for a moment, her eyes lowering briefly as if gathering her thoughts. The wind on Mars seemed to stop, leaving an eerie stillness between them. "I never wanted to leave, Evan. It wasn't my choice," she began, her voice soft, almost regretful. "I was sent here by my people, but I was not what I seemed. The truth is, I'm not from Earth. I'm not even human." The confession hung heavily between them. Evan's heart skipped a beat, his mind struggling to grasp the enormity of her words. He had always known there was something special about her, something that set her apart from everyone else. But this? This was beyond anything he could have imagined. Her lips parted as she began to explain her origins, the story unfolding in a way that felt as ancient as the stars themselves. Leah wasn't just a normal child from a faraway place. She was an alien, a member of a race known as the HFY, a species of beings who were both peaceful and incredibly advanced. They were shapeshifters, capable of assuming any form they desired, blending seamlessly into the worlds they visited. Leah's real name was not Leah. It was Leorenthel Zuna, a princess of the HFY, sent to Earth under the guise of a human child. The HFY had been observing humanity for centuries, fascinated by the ways humans lived, loved, and built their societies. They had quietly studied Earth from the shadows, never fully revealing themselves to the world. Leah had been one of their most eager volunteers, wanting to experience life as a human and learn from it. She had been placed in Evan's neighborhood to observe, to learn, and to integrate into human society. Her time with Evan, however, had become something more. She had genuinely come to care for him, to form a bond with him that transcended her mission. The alien princess continued, her eyes filled with a deep sadness as she spoke of her people's fate. "I was sent to live among you, to blend in. But things changed. The HFY are peaceful, but not all races in the galaxy share that peace. A warlike species, the Varkaz, discovered our existence and began hunting us down. They're ruthless, merciless in their pursuit of my people, seeking to wipe us out. They've tracked us for years, moving from one planet to the next, destroying everything in their path." Her voice trembled slightly as she continued, but there was a strength behind her words, a resolve that Evan had never seen in her before. "When the Varkaz began their campaign against us, we had to leave Earth. It was too dangerous for you, for the humans, for anyone. The HFY took us into hiding, and we became scattered across the galaxy, trying to survive, trying to avoid detection. My family was one of the first to be targeted." Evan felt a surge of anger, but more than that, a deep sense of guilt. He had no idea. He had never known why she had disappeared, why she had left so suddenly, and now, hearing this, it made sense, but it also shattered him. "But why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you explain anything to me back then?" His voice cracked slightly as he spoke, the pain of losing her all over again resurfacing with force. Leah's face softened, and she stepped closer to him, her presence comforting, yet distant. "I couldn't tell you, Evan. Not then. The HFY kept our identities hidden for a reason. If humans knew the truth, if anyone found out who we truly were, it could have endangered both our species. The Varkaz would have come for you too. I couldn't risk it. I thought it would be safer for you if I just vanished. But I never stopped thinking about you, Evan. You were my friend. I cared for you more than I should have, and I knew the risk of staying too long." Her voice was soft now, almost apologetic, and Evan could see the sorrow in her eyes. "Leaving you was the hardest thing I ever did, but I had no choice." Evan stood there, overwhelmed, his mind still struggling to process everything she had just said. He had never expected any of this. He had never imagined that his childhood friend, the girl who had once been the most important person in his life, was not even human. The weight of her words was crushing. He had thought she had left because of some mundane reason. Maybe her family had moved away, or maybe she had grown tired of him. But this? This was a betrayal of a different kind. A betrayal of truth, of trust, of friendship. But even with all the confusion and betrayal swirling in his chest, Evan couldn't deny the feeling that was rising within him. The same feeling he had had when he was a child, that unspoken connection between him and Leah, still pulsed in his heart. Despite everything, despite the secrets and the lies, she was still the person who had been there for him when he needed her most. And now she was back. She had returned, and the world was different. The threat of the Varkaz was real, and Evan could feel the weight of the responsibility beginning to settle on his shoulders. Leah wasn't just his childhood friend. She was a princess, a survivor of a dying species, and she had come to him for help. "I'm here now, Evan," she said, her voice breaking through his turbulent thoughts. "But there's something I need to ask of you. I can't do this alone. I need your help to stop the Varkas. I need your strength, your knowledge. You might not understand, but Earth is in danger. The galaxy is in danger. And the only way to protect everything we care about is if we work together." Her words echoed in his mind as the gravity of the situation settled in. There was no turning back now. Evan wasn't just a technician on Mars anymore. He was a part of something far larger, far more dangerous than anything he had ever imagined. And as the weight of his decision pressed on him, he knew one thing for certain. He would do whatever it took to protect her. His childhood neighbor, his friend, and now the last hope of the LRI. Evan sat in the control room of the Martian outpost, his fingers idly tracing the edge of the metallic table before him. His mind raced, still reeling from everything Leah had revealed. The world he had known, the life he had built, seemed like a distant memory now. The quiet hum of the base's machinery was the only sound in the room, a stark contrast to the chaos of thoughts crashing inside his head. He had always imagined that the universe was vast, but he had never once considered the possibility that his childhood friend was not even human, let alone the princess of an alien race. Even as he tried to process this, there was something else gnawing at him, an unsettling feeling, a sense that they were running out of time. Leah's request echoed in his mind, over and over again. Earth was in danger, and so was the galaxy. The Varkas were coming, and it wasn't just a threat to the LRI. It was a threat to everything, to humanity itself. Evan didn't fully understand the scope of what was at stake, but the urgency in Leah's voice told him everything he needed to know. He could no longer ignore it. The stakes were far too high. Evan took a deep breath, standing up from his seat, and pacing the small room. His mind kept circling back to the same question. Why had Leah come to him for help? What did he, just an ordinary human technician, have to offer someone like her, someone so powerful, so advanced? Yet, when he looked into her eyes, he saw something that transcended her alien nature. She was afraid, not for herself, but for the people she cared about. The LRI, her people, had been hunted for years by the Varkas, a race of brutal, war-hungry beings that showed no mercy. It was clear that the Varkas would stop at nothing to destroy them, and now they were coming for Earth. Leah had been sent here to this desolate planet to help protect her species, but she couldn't do it alone. She needed allies. She needed humans. Him. He could still feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him, but as much as his instincts screamed to run, to hide from the truth, he knew there was no escape. The fight was coming to them, whether they were ready or not. The Varkas were relentless, and they had the resources to wipe out entire civilizations without hesitation. Evan knew he couldn't sit idly by while that happened. He had to act. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door, and without waiting for permission, Leah stepped inside. She was no longer the girl he had known as a child. She had changed, grown into someone, or something, much more. Her presence filled the room, even though she said nothing. She simply walked over to the table where Evan stood, her gaze steady, unwavering. "I know you're thinking about this," she said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of everything she had shared. "But I need you to understand, Evan. This isn't just about saving the LRI. It's about saving all of us. The Varkos are powerful, but they can be stopped. Together, we can build a defense, a way to fight back. But I can't do this alone. The only chance we have is to unite." Evan looked at her, still unsure of what that meant, but something inside him stirred. It wasn't just the desperation in her voice or the silent plea in her eyes. It was the undeniable bond they shared. All those years ago when they were children, he had believed in her, trusted her, and that trust hadn't disappeared, even after all this time. She had returned, and somehow, in the midst of all the uncertainty, that felt like the one thing that had remained constant. "Tell me what we need to do," Evan said, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts raging within. "How do we fight back?" Leah's expression softened, but there was still a tension in her posture, a quiet urgency. "We need to get to Earth," she explained. "The Varkas are already there, laying the groundwork for their invasion. We need to rally humanity, unite the various factions that are divided, and prepare for their arrival. The only way to do that is to show them the truth, that we're not alone, and that the galaxy is full of dangers far worse than what they can imagine." Evan felt a knot tighten in his chest. How was he supposed to convince Earth's leaders to trust an alien princess, let alone unite them against a threat they didn't even know existed? The political climate on Earth was fractured, with nations at odds, distrust between governments, and widespread skepticism about anything that seemed out of the ordinary. Most people had no idea that aliens were real, let alone that an intergalactic war was on the horizon. Even if Leah showed them the truth, how could he, an average human, help convince them? "You think Earth will believe us?" he asked, doubt creeping into his voice. "They won't even accept that we're not alone. And even if they did, we're not exactly in the best position to fight a galactic war." Leah's eyes locked onto his, unwavering. "I know it won't be easy, but we have to try. If we don't act now, we risk losing everything." She paused, as if gathering strength. "I've been on the run for so long, Evan. My people have hidden themselves from the universe to survive, but I can't run anymore. I need your help. I can show you things, teach you how to fight back, how to prepare, but we need to move quickly." Evan nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. He could see now that there was no turning back. His life had already changed the moment Leah had stepped into his world again, and with that, he knew that the choices he made from here on out would affect the fate of more than just Earth. The galaxy was on the edge of war, and if he and Leah didn't succeed, everything they knew could be destroyed. "All right," Evan said, his voice firm. "We'll do this. We'll fight." Leah smiled, a faint flicker of relief crossing her face, but it was short-lived. The time for celebration was over. The first step was clear. They had to return to Earth. Evan didn't know what awaited them there, but he knew one thing for sure. They couldn't do this alone. Together, they would face whatever challenges came their way, united in their mission to stop the Varkas and protect their home. The next morning, Evan and Leah boarded the ship that would take them back to Earth, the last remnants of Martian, dust settling on the hull as they began their journey. The stars stretched out before them, endless and unknown. As they looked out into the vastness of space, Evan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The real battle had yet to come, and the fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy rested in their hands. Evan and Leah stood on the observation deck of the spaceship as it made its descent toward Earth. The vastness of space stretched endlessly around them, but Earth, their home, was drawing closer. The blue planet shimmered in the distance, a beacon of hope and history. As they approached, a heavy silence fell over the two of them. Evan had never felt so small, yet so vital. The reality of their mission was beginning to settle in. This wasn't just about saving a planet or a race. It was about survival. Humanity's survival in the face of a threat they had no way of understanding, let alone fighting. Yet, Evan couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play, something that went beyond the war between the Ellerai and the Varkos. This mission, this fight, felt deeply personal. Leah, standing beside him, was not the same person he had known in their childhood. She was different now, hardened, focused, and yet there was a glimmer of the girl she had once been. The princess, the alien, the warrior. She wore all of those identities with quiet strength, but Evan still saw the flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. She was carrying the weight of an entire species on her shoulders, and that kind of burden could break anyone. Still, she never showed it. She had become someone capable of leading a fight, someone who had been forged in the flames of conflict. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a symbol of hope for her people, and now she needed to be that symbol for humanity too. Their mission was clear: unite the fractured factions of Earth, expose the alien threat, and prepare for war. But Evan knew that convincing Earth's leaders, with their different agendas and varying degrees of belief in extraterrestrial life, would be the hardest part. They would need more than just proof. They would need trust, cooperation, and most importantly, time. And time was something they didn't have. The Varkos were already on their way. The window to act was closing fast, and once the Varkos set their sights on Earth, it would be too late. No one could predict the devastation they would bring, but everyone knew it would be catastrophic. As the ship entered Earth's atmosphere, Evan's thoughts returned to the night Leah had first appeared on Mars, the way she had looked at him with those familiar, searching eyes. He still couldn't believe it. Leah, his childhood friend, the girl who had once been his closest companion, was now a key figure in a galactic war. But even in the midst of all this chaos, he couldn't deny that he felt a strange sense of comfort with her. They had shared a bond once, and it was something that hadn't disappeared with time. She had trusted him then, and now it was his turn to trust her. As the ship glided toward the designated landing site, Evan began to understand the true nature of their mission. They weren't just heading to Earth to warn humanity. They were heading to a battlefield where the fate of the galaxy would be decided. The Varkos wouldn't hesitate to destroy everything, and Earth's fragmented leadership would need more than just an alien princess to bring them together. They would need proof, tangible evidence that the threat was real. And that was something Evan didn't know how to provide. His background in technology and engineering had never prepared him for diplomatic negotiations or the complexities of intergalactic warfare. The ship touched down with a soft thud, and the hatch opened with a hiss. Earth's familiar landscape stretched out before them. Evan hadn't been home in years, and though the world below him seemed the same, everything felt different. Earth was no longer the home he remembered. The conflict between nations, the deep divides in its governments, and the skepticism surrounding any form of alien contact made it a world on the edge of crisis. It wasn't just the Varkos they had to worry about. It was their own inability to unite against a common threat. And that was the biggest challenge Evan and Leah faced. They were met by a small team of Earth's top military and scientific leaders, all handpicked to assess the situation. Evan could see the skepticism in their eyes as they looked at Leah. It was difficult to blame them. After all, how could anyone trust an alien who claimed to be a princess? There was no immediate evidence of the war she had described, no visible signs of the Varkos advancing. The political tension was palpable. Some of the leaders were visibly wary of Leah's presence, while others were curious, trying to understand what had brought them here. Evan realized that they weren't just questioning Leah. They were questioning him too. They needed proof, not just her words. Leah stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. She was calm, but there was an edge to her voice when she spoke. "I know this sounds impossible. I know you've heard countless rumors, and I know that your world is divided. But the Varkos are coming. They've already started infiltrating your governments, preparing to invade. I cannot stand by and watch Earth fall to them. I was sent here to warn you and to offer help." Evan watched as her words sank in. The leaders were listening now, their expressions ranging from disbelief to cautious concern. One of the generals stepped forward, eyeing Leah warily. "We've heard stories of alien invasions, but we've never seen anything like this. Do you have proof? Anything to back up your claims?" Evan could see Leah tense, her hands clenched at her sides. This was the moment they had been dreading, the moment when trust would be tested. He stepped forward, trying to add some weight to Leah's words. "I've seen what she can do. I've seen her fight, and I know she's telling the truth. We have to believe her. The Varkos will destroy everything if we don't act now." There was a long silence. The general seemed to weigh their words, and then slowly, he nodded. "All right, we'll listen. But you'll need more than just stories to convince the people of Earth. You'll need to prove that we're not just fighting an alien threat. We're fighting for our survival." As the meeting progressed, Evan realized just how difficult this would be. The evidence Leah provided wasn't going to be enough to sway all the factions of Earth. The diplomatic efforts alone would take time, and as they all knew, time was a luxury they didn't have. But as Evan looked at Leah, standing at the center of the room, poised and determined, he understood one thing. There was no going back. They had to find a way to unite humanity, to forge alliances between the divided nations, and to prepare for a war unlike anything Earth had ever seen. The real battle had begun, and it wasn't just against the Varkos, it was against time, against fear, and against their own doubts. Evan realized that the stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. It wasn't just about protecting a planet, it was about protecting the future. Together, with Leah at his side, he would help lead the fight. They couldn't afford to fail. The galaxy was watching, and this was their chance to prove that humanity could stand united in the face of annihilation. And as the meeting concluded, the uneasy tension in the room faded slightly. There was still a long road ahead, but for the first time, Evan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could make a difference. They had no choice but to try.